I dragged myself down the gravel driveway after a 14-hour shift rewiring the emergency power systems at St. Jude's Hospital. My boots crunched against the stones, shoulders aching from the weight of my tool belt, the smell of copper and motor oil clinging to my clothes like a second skin. All I wanted was a cold beer, a brief shower, and a few quiet hours in my sanctuary, my garage. But something felt off. The door was partially open. At first, I thought I'd left it that way. Then I saw her. The glare of pearl-white paint in the fading sunlight. The perfectly parked BMW X5, dead center between my workbench and tool cabinets. My sanctuary had been invaded. A beep. A chirp. The alarm went off as if mocking me. And there she was, Cynthia Harper, HOA treasurer, perched on my patio chair like she owned the block, scrolling her phone, casually waving at me. Her expression didn't even change when she saw my steel-toed boots crunching closer. "Jake," she called, her voice sugary but sharp enough to cut through the evening air. "Emergency parking. Community safety." I froze for a second, gripping my phone. Instead of exploding, I took a deep breath and started recording. Calm, deliberate. "Cynthia," I said evenly, "you're on my property without permission. That clause you're talking about doesn't exist. This is harassment." Her perfect smile faltered for a fraction of a second. I loved that moment. 2 years ago, buying this house in Redwood Pines Estates had felt like winning the lottery. A modest 3-bedroom home, 2-car garage, enough space to finally build Lily's treehouse without neighbors measuring every inch of my yard or scrutinizing my every plank of wood. I'm 34, a single dad, electrician, survivor of years of overtime and instant noodles just to scrape together a down payment. My garage smelled of sawdust and copper wire, a mix of old tools, memories, and potential. My grandfather's workbench, scarred and weathered, stood proudly against the wall, each tool meticulously arranged like soldiers ready for battle. It was my world. A small fortress of order and creation, my space in a world that often felt hostile and judgmental. The neighborhood outside looked perfect. Tree-lined streets, freshly mowed lawns, kids on bicycles, retirees tending their gardens. HOA fees were $200 a month. Small, mostly harmless, or so I thought. Simple rules, I figured: keep your lawn neat, no neon paint jobs, live your life. Then came Cynthia Harper. Cynthia, 51, with her designer heels clicking like a metronome of menace, her perfume suffocating anyone in a 5-foot radius, husband Gregory at her side, city planner and her personal legal enabler. Together, they wielded the HOA like a weapon. Every tiny infraction she noticed became an opportunity to assert dominance, to intimidate, to control. I first met her 6 months after moving in. I was helping Mrs. Patel, an elderly neighbor, install security lights outside her house after a spate of break-ins. Cynthia appeared out of nowhere, heels sharp on the pavement, clipboard in hand. "No permits posted for this," she demanded, the smell of her perfume thick in the summer air. I calmly explained the code, showed my license, offered references. "We simply cannot allow questionable contractors to compromise property values," she said, emphasizing the word questionable like it carried some moral judgment. My 12 years of licensed experience, the lives I'd kept safe wiring hospitals and clinics, meant nothing to her. She had already decided I was beneath her. That day, I learned that simple was never part of Cynthia Harper's vocabulary. Suburbia, she believed, was her personal chessboard, and every homeowner was a pawn. Over the next 18 months, Cynthia elevated neighborhood policing into a full-blown performance art. Dawn patrols with her clipboard, jotting down violations no one else noticed. Wind chimes that didn't match the HOA-approved aesthetic, trash bins retrieved too late, children's bikes left in slightly wrong positions. The sound of her heels clicking across the pavement became our early warning system. Windows closed, blinds twitched nervously, kids scattered like startled birds. Even Lily noticed. One evening, watching her swing in the backyard, she asked me, "Daddy, why does the mean lady always look like she smells something bad?" I didn't have an answer that wouldn't make her cry. I could only promise her that Daddy would figure out a way to protect her, and our home. I tried to fly under her radar. Trimmed my grass to exactly 2.75 inches. Parked my work van on the street. Kept my garage so orderly it could have been a showroom. But that Tuesday changed everything. I had spent 14 hours rewiring a hospital's emergency backup system, Steel-toed boots heavy, shoulders screaming, hands raw. I just wanted a few minutes of peace, to check on Lily's treehouse project. Instead, I found two SUVs, Cynthia's BMW and a black Mercedes, invading every inch of my garage. My tools were scattered, my workbench padlocked, a sticky note on my grandfather's vise, temporary relocation for client staging. Community cooperation appreciated. CH. The metallic taste of rage filled my mouth, mixed with the scent of luxury leather and sawdust. I could have smashed something. Every fiber of my being screamed for violence. Instead, I did something she didn't expect. I called the non-emergency police line. 20 minutes later, Officer Ramirez arrived. Solid, calm, unimpressed. He took photos, assessed the situation, and then said the words I'd been waiting to hear. "Sir, this looks like harassment." Watching Cynthia try to explain her right to padlock my tools was like watching a masterclass in failure. Her voice rose with each excuse, hands fluttering like trapped birds. Officer Ramirez's expression grew more skeptical with every word. "Property deed trumps HOA," he said finally. "You might want to remove your vehicles before this escalates into a criminal matter." I exhaled, a small victorious laugh escaping. That was the first crack in her armor. That night, as Lily FaceTimed me from her mom's, she asked about the treehouse. "Daddy, is it going to be ready this weekend?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We'll just have a few obstacles to work around." What Lily didn't know, what no one in the neighborhood knew, was that her innocent treehouse project was about to become the centerpiece of my battle. Every plank, every nail, every corner of our backyard was about to reveal the truth. Cynthia Harper had overstepped every boundary she thought she owned. The next morning, I woke to find that Cynthia had escalated her harassment beyond my wildest expectations. Not only was her pearl-white BMW still dead center in my garage, but now a sleek black Mercedes sat beside it, taking up every inch of space where my tools had been meticulously organized. My $3,000 electrical supply cabinet had been pushed to the far wall and padlocked. A sticky note rested atop my grandfather's old vise, temporary relocation for client staging. Community cooperation appreciated. CH. Rage coursed through me like electricity through a live wire. The metallic taste of fury, mixed with sawdust and luxury leather, made my stomach turn. Every instinct screamed to grab my bolt cutters and teach her a lesson she'd never forget. But 12 years in electrical work had taught me the value of patience. One wrong move, and the entire house, let alone my career, could be fried in a flash. So I did the one thing that would hurt Cynthia far more than any tool could. I called the non-emergency police line. Officer Ramirez arrived 20 minutes later, a tall man with a calm demeanor and eyes that had clearly seen their fair share of suburban absurdity. I walked him through the scene, vehicles blocking private property, tools padlocked, and the intrusive note. His pen clicked against his notepad like a metronome, counting down the seconds until justice could be served. "Sir," he said finally, eyes meeting mine, "this looks like harassment." Cynthia, of course, tried to argue. Her voice rose, faltered, and wavered in ways that only someone who had never faced consequences before could manage. Her perfectly manicured hands fluttered like trapped birds. Ramirez didn't flinch. "Property deed trumps HOA every time," he said. "You might want to remove your vehicles before this becomes a criminal matter." Victory. Small, but delicious. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the extent of her audacity. How many homeowners had she terrorized quietly, knowing most would never fight back? I sat at my grandfather's workbench, tools in front of me but untouched, as Lily FaceTimed me from her mom's house. "Daddy," she said, eyes wide with innocence, "is the treehouse going to be ready this weekend?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said carefully. "But we might need to work around some obstacles." She didn't know that those obstacles were the very people trying to steal our sanctuary. By Thursday, Cynthia had launched her social media assault, sending urgent notices to the neighborhood Facebook groups. She called for an emergency HOA board meeting, citing my garage as a security threat and a visual blight. Neighbors shared her posts nervously, as if she were some kind of suburban law enforcement. But this time, she underestimated the very audience she hoped to control. Mrs. Patel posted photos showing the harmless security lights I'd installed. Tom Rodriguez shared screenshots of fines he'd received for parking his work truck legally. Sarah Mitchell posted a copy of the HOA bylaws, which made it clear that nearly all of Cynthia's rules existed only in her imagination. Even Officer Ramirez's wife left a comment, sarcastic but perfect. Funny how some think a badge lets them take your property. The cracks in her armor were forming. I spent Friday immersed in research. County office visits, document requests, surveyor maps, HOA incorporation records. Every scrap of evidence was a potential weapon. My lunch break became a mission. The musty scent of filing cabinets and institutional coffee mixed with adrenaline as I scoured property deeds. I discovered something beautiful. My garage was entirely within my deeded property lines. The HOA's map was based on outdated surveys, legally worthless. But it wasn't just the property lines. The more I dug, the more I uncovered Cynthia's abuse of authority. Emergency tree removals charged to the HOA that had been handled by the city for free. Landscaping consultations funneled through her personal staging business. Financial discrepancies spanning $25,000 over 18 months. Every paper, every record, was another nail in her invisible crown. By Saturday, Cynthia's audacity reached a new level. She distributed emergency letters in hand-delivered envelopes, warning neighbors of a looming community standards violation caused by me. She tried to portray me as reckless, irresponsible, a threat to property values. But instead of intimidating anyone, her letters were met with skepticism. Several neighbors called me directly, sharing their confusion, admiration, and quiet defiance. That evening, Lily FaceTimed me again. "Daddy, why is the mean lady always mean?" she asked, her voice innocent but sharp in a way only an 8-year-old could manage. "Because baby," I said, hiding a grin, "some people think rules are for controlling others, not for keeping order. But Daddy knows how to play the game too." Her laughter on the screen, so full of trust and hope, made every painstaking hour of research worth it. Sunday came with another challenge. The double invasion persisted, but now Cynthia had a full entourage. Harold Yes-Man Henderson and Patricia Disapproval Lewis, 2 board members I had barely met, joined her in the garage. They stood awkwardly, clipboard-wielding extensions of her ego, while I silently documented every infraction, every illegal action. I realized something crucial. Patience was my greatest weapon. She thrived on intimidation, on the assumption that homeowners would panic or lose their tempers. By remaining calm, strategic, and armed with evidence, I had begun turning the tide. I started compiling everything: photos, videos, HOA documents, county records, financial discrepancies, and emails obtained through public records requests. One email from her husband Gregory, a city planner, was particularly delicious. Target Morrison property for maximum leverage. Wife's staging business requires access cycles. Escalate HOA pressure. The audacity, the betrayal, the criminal simplicity of it. Every word, every line, now in my hands. By Monday, the neighborhood tension was palpable. Rumors spread. The electrician who refused to be bullied had allies, evidence, and a plan. Cynthia's social media posts became defensive, her words frantic, her composure fraying. Residents started posting their own evidence. The narrative was shifting. The predator had become the prey. That night, I sat at the garage workbench, tools neatly back in place after careful documentation. Lily's treehouse plans were spread across the table. I traced the property lines with my finger, visualizing the perfect stage for the final act. Her harassment had unintentionally exposed the perfect opportunity, the ultimate demonstration of who owned what, and whose authority actually mattered. For the first time since she'd first invaded my garage, I felt in control. Every call, every investigation, every photo, every email had led to this. Cynthia Harper had overreached, and I was ready to capitalize. Monday evening arrived with the weight of a neighborhood soap opera. The so-called emergency HOA meeting was set in the elementary school cafeteria, a sterile fluorescent-lit room smelling faintly of mac and cheese from lunch and industrial cleaner. Folding chairs lined up in rows, and a long wobbly table sat at the front. Cynthia Harper arrived, navy blazer sharp, heels clicking like a metronome of authority, flanked by Harold Henderson and Patricia Lewis. Their expressions suggested confidence, or at least the practiced illusion of it. I walked in calmly, carrying 3 thick folders of evidence: property deeds, HOA incorporation papers, surveyor maps, financial records, and copies of emails from Gregory Harper. My presence alone was a statement. This wasn't going to be her playground anymore. "Where is everyone else?" I asked, setting my folders on the table. Cynthia's practiced smile didn't waver. "The other board members couldn't attend tonight, but we have a quorum. We can proceed with essential business." I nodded, pulling out my phone to record. Every angle, every exchange, documented. She hadn't considered this, of course. The power of video evidence against someone who thrives on intimidation. First item on the agenda: clarification of parking enforcement procedures in light of recent non-compliance issues. Cynthia slid a 3-page typed document across the table, filled with legal-sounding jargon about unauthorized garage usage patterns and fines retroactive for 60 days, totaling nearly $800 in penalties for actions she herself initiated. "You're trying to fine me $800 for using my own garage?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. The room seemed to shrink as every eye turned toward us. Harold bobbled his head enthusiastically like a dashboard toy. Patricia pursed her lips, attempting disapproval but betraying a hint of uncertainty. "Community standards affect all property values," Cynthia replied, her voice slightly shaky. I opened the first folder. "According to your insurance policy, the HOA explicitly excludes coverage for board members' personal business activities, like using community resources for real estate staging. Furthermore," I said, sliding the next folder across the table, "I have documented $23,000 in financial discrepancies over the past 18 months. The silence that followed was heavy, almost palpable. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, filling the room with tension. Storm cleanup billed to the HOA, but performed by city crews for free. Landscaping consultations charged to community funds, but done through your private staging company. Emergency tree removal costs over $8,400, again, handled by the city at no charge." Harold's jaw slackened. Patricia gasped. Cynthia's face drained of color, pink replaced by the sickly pale of someone who had just realized their control was slipping. Then came the icing on the cake. I pulled out the emails from Gregory Harper, obtained through public records requests. "Mrs. Harper, did you know your husband's city planning emails are public records? Let me read one for you." I held up my phone. "Problem properties requiring community pressure to improve neighborhood composition. Target working-class homeowners for maximum leverage." The room collectively froze. Harold looked like he had just seen a ghost. Patricia blinked, unsure if she was witnessing reality. Cynthia's hands twitched, unable to form words. "Taken out of context," she whispered, but the faltering tone betrayed her. I continued, reading from another email. "Wife staging business needs 3-month access cycles. Recommend escalating HOA pressure on Morrison property for optimal client presentation timeline." Her face was a mask of horror now. Every neighbor in that cafeteria could see it. The queen of control, the self-appointed dictator, had been caught red-handed. Social media messages began to ping quietly on my phone. Neighbors had seen the meeting streaming live from my recording. Mrs. Patel's post described the harassment she endured. Tom Rodriguez uploaded images of bogus fines. Sarah Mitchell posted the official HOA rules proving Cynthia's emergency clauses were imaginary. The tide had turned. Cynthia tried to regain composure. "This is highly irregular," she stammered. "I demand." "You demand." I interrupted softly. "You've spent 18 months bullying and harassing your neighbors. You've abused your position to gain personal advantage. And now, you've been exposed. The board and neighborhood deserve the truth." Her allies, Harold and Patricia, no longer looked confident. Harold's enthusiastic nodding had completely stopped. Patricia's lips were pressed into a thin line of disapproval that now seemed hollow, ineffective. By the time I finished, the room was quiet except for the occasional gasp. Cynthia had nothing left. Her social media campaign, her carefully crafted image of perfection, her imagined rules, all evaporated in real time. Outside the cafeteria, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered. They'd been watching the meeting unfold through recordings I had shared discreetly. Murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire. The intimidating HOA treasurer had been defeated, exposed for misuse of authority, and publicly humiliated. I stepped outside, took a deep breath of the cool evening air, and looked at the houses around me. Some blinds twitched nervously, children peeked from windows, and a few neighbors waved, silently acknowledging the shift in power. The same streets that had felt constraining and tense for 2 years suddenly seemed lighter, freer. That evening, Lily FaceTimed me again, her eyes sparkling. "Daddy, did the mean lady get scared?" she asked. "Yes, baby," I said, smiling. "But more importantly, we won." Her laughter, so full of trust and joy, reminded me why I had endured the months of harassment, research, and tension. This wasn't just about a garage. It was about protecting our sanctuary, standing up for what's right, and teaching Lily that even the smallest person can fight back against unfair power. In the days that followed, Cynthia resigned from the HOA. Her public image crumbled in the neighborhood. Financial mismanagement and harassment reports were submitted to county authorities. The BMW and Mercedes were gone from my garage, replaced by the familiar scent of sawdust and copper wire. My tools were back where they belonged.